Hello. Oh my goodness, you guys are already here. WB, does that mean welcome back? Is that a thing? I think that's what that means. Not all up to speed on the internet lingo chat. That's so cool. Okay, thank you for confirming. You can hear me. You guys, okay, so last time playing with this and it was like all jostling, sorry. It was like I was playing with this the whole entire time. So I thought I was doing so good to like put it through my shirt so I wouldn't play with it and then the sound would be better. And then I unplugged it instead of take it all the way out of my shirt. And now we know, don't do that. So we live and we learn. Gosh. Good times, huh? We still have coffee and you guys are still here, so that seems pretty good. So we have Mars in Capricorn left to cover, and I'm super excited about this because Mars is an energy that I personally have felt a lot of time feeling my way into. Mostly because when I very first learned that all of this energy, all of these different energies are inside of all of us, that Mars energy, I was like, I don't think I have that. Whatever day they gave out that energy, I don't think I got my scoop because I can't find it. And so I've spent a lot of, oh my gosh, Scooby. So I spent a lot of time like trying to figure out like what is Mars energy. And Mars is the ruler of Aries, the modern ruler of Aries. It also is the ancient ruler of Scorpio. And you can look at Aries or Scorpio to understand Mars energy. And kind of like we said back, Stephen Forrest says, like, if you're not using Saturn and Uranus, you're missing half of Aquarius. I would say the same thing is applying here to Mars. Like, to understand Mars, you really do have to look at Aries and Scorpio, that there's all of this to it. Mars, and let's like talk through Aries here for just a second. Aries is cardinal fire, meaning it's the beginning of spring. The cardinal energy, the fire energy. It's also raw fire. So Leo and Sagittarius are a more refined version of fire energy, as opposed to Mars is very primal, very instinctual. So not a lot of thought going into it. You just feel a certain way, and either something's worth going to war over or it's not. And basically, Mars is our competitive side. Mars is our inner warrior. Mars also talks some about our sexuality. It's part of our sexuality. Venus is another part of our sexuality. So Mars has a lot of different facets and faces, just like every other piece. But he does paint this picture, which I agree is very interesting. So Mars is where we like assert our right to exist in this world. And if you have if you have heavy Aries energy, maybe that's easier for you. And you're working on the shadow of maybe don't be so assertive. You're trying to figure out how to like rein it in a little bit. And then there's others, and I would put myself in this category, where you don't assert yourselves at all to your own detriment. And then later you're regretful about not asserting yourself. So there's ways that you can work with your Mars energy from both sides. One thing he did say about Mars energy that I found extra fascinating was Mars is that warrior spirit. It's where it's like kill or be killed kind of thing. Like, do you want to be predator or do you want to be prey? And I mean, if we get to choose and you have to pick one, I think we may all pick the same one, right? There's a reason humans are at the top of the food chain, because we choose to be the predator, not the prey. And so Mars is like, basically how he put it, it's like our murderous instinct. It's like this idea that like to live, you must kill. And that's getting primal, all right? Right? Like that's getting a little intense. But it's so true, whether you eat meat or you eat vegetables. He goes into this whole thing where he read the book, The Secret Life of Plants, and how if you love a plant, it'll grow more than if you don't love the plant. And he did this experiment and he found that, yes, like the plant that I loved got bigger faster than the other plant that I ignored, but took care of it, watered it or whatever. But he tried to send love vibes to the other plant. He would play his guitar and serenade like love songs for the plant, and it got bigger. And so he proved to himself, he believes anyway, he's convinced that yeah, plants are alive. So like even if you're a vegetarian or a vegan, like I mean those plants, they're still alive. So like one way or another, if you want to survive, you have to kill if you want to eat. And he also painted the picture of like kind of a National Geographic version of like you're watching one show and it's showing it from like an antelope's perspective or like a gazelle's perspective, and there's a pack of them, and then there's these hungry wolves or lions or whatever, and they separate off the baby antelope and take it down, and now the mama antelope is like looking on and like heartbroken and sad and obviously devastated, and there's nothing she can do about it. But then like it shows the lions or wolves or whatever like taking that carcass back, and they're starving little hungry wolf cubs that like they're feeding their family by this one's loss is these people's survival. And nature is like that. And so Mars is our instinct to survive. It's our instinct to do what we have to do to survive. Predator or prey, we choose predator. We at least are going to try to save ourselves. The survival instinct. And the thing that I really liked about what he said is that if you don't have a way to channel that instinct constructively, then it turns inward. It doesn't go away just because you're not expressing it. And in today's day and age, expressing aggression and competitiveness is almost frowned upon. There's like a negative connotation around competition, like the way that we give the kids. I don't have kids, by the way, so like don't come for me on like parenting strategies, but like the way we give the kids like a participation ribbon, like we don't keep track of who won the game because like heaven forbid they should experience competition. And the way he explained that, which I thought was perfect, was like, think about it. Like if you want to be a professional astrologer, for example, and he's talking like, he did that back in the day where the internet wasn't a thing. So if you were going to be a professional astrologer, the people in your town had to come and like patronize your business. And he's like, and now imagine that you're not the only one in your town who wants to be a professional astrologer. So now there's two of you and you're in competition with each other. And who wins that competition? If we're talking about, if you have competition, you're more likely to get better and better and better and like become excellent at your craft so that you can compete with your competitor. So if the end of the competition is who is the best astrologer, the winner of the competition is the community that you both serve. And that just, isn't that good? Like, that's so good. Like, competition is a good thing. It's a very good thing. That's why monopolies are illegal. Like, we don't allow there to be only one. We want there to be multiple different kinds of businesses doing the same thing, giving each other competition so that one person doesn't become all powerful. That competition keeps us humble. Predator or prey, like it keeps us humble when we have to compete to save our own life. He also uses this one that's like, which again kind of goes back to Mars in general, like encompasses courage and bravery. And he paints this picture of like, it's in the spring and there's a robin's nest outside your door and you see the little eggs in there. A couple days later, you see that there's now 5 little baby robins in this nest and that the parents aren't there. And these little baby robins are just crying and demanding to be fed, squawking up a storm. And he's like, you think about that. Like, if they really understood like how minute their little presence is in this world, and the only thing that's protecting them from being prey is a couple of other birds who are mostly gone and who are gone right now. And yet here is this little creature squawking to be fed. and basically demanding, asserting that it will have life on this planet. And I love that. And it's like the idea that Mars fights for its life, even when it's terrified, even when like maybe that's not even a great idea. Mars is the side of us that like is that instinctual like self-protection, and also extends like very naturally to protection of like anyone that we care about. When we see less advantaged people being, I guess, taken advantage of, then there's something that rises up inside of us that says, like, no, like power is meant to be felt, not wielded over people. And so fighting on behalf of those less fortunate or those less advantaged, like that is very much what Mars wants. Mars is our ability to go to war when we need to, when something is worth fighting for. And we all have a Mars planet placement inside our chart. So looking towards the sign and the house of your Mars can help you to kind of put a face on your warrior. Like I said, like for me, that was something I'm like, I don't know where it is. Like, what? I don't have this, I swear. Like, what are you talking about? I don't have a side to me that's like that. And my Mars is in Pisces in the 12th house, which means like my version of fight is to love someone until they see love. And yeah, that's like compassion is basically my weapon of choice. And there's a reason that I didn't recognize my warrior, because yeah, she's a peaceful lady. She's actually a mermaid, and she mostly fights her battles at like this deep emotional place where there's no hand-to-hand combat required when you sort things out energetically. So my Mars in Pisces doesn't look like a typical warrior, but it's a warrior all the same. So I do invite you, as we, go through this Mars and Capricorn season, to get in touch with your own Mars energy, because just like when the sun goes through a sign, when Mars goes through a sign, it's showing you like a different light on your own Mars energy that you can get to know yourself at a deeper level. So Capricorn, we'll switch gears and kind of cover that for just a little bit. And because I spent so much time last time and the first time going through Capricorn in pretty good detail, so I want to share an interpretation of Capricorn that I really resonated with and was brand new to me. I got it on the Molly McCord podcast. And gosh, I don't remember. I think it was on her podcast from Wednesday, Maddie, if you can look. Let's put Mondays and Wednesdays. She does a podcast on Mondays and Wednesdays, and so good. So much information, such depth to her knowledge. And anyway, so she went into like Capricorn is an earth sign, and earth and water elements are the feminine energies, and air and fire are the masculine energies. And when we think of Capricorn energy, I think a lot of times, like I sense it as very masculine, but it's actually feminine. It's actually a feminine energy. And so I wanted to spend some time like talking about that just a little bit. So for it to be a feminine energy, it's like, it is the sister sign of Cancer. And when we think about Cancer, typically I explain Cancer Capricorn as the divine mother on Cancer's end and the divine father on Capricorn's end. But Capricorn is also a feminine sign. And I think we can like look deeper under father mother as both are nurturing, like both energies nurture the child. They just do it in very different ways. The other thing that she was explaining about Capricorn is like, it's like the wise old crone. And crone is a word that I don't know it like super well, but I got some context clues out of what she said. And I'm going to Google. I think it's like that. I could be spelling that completely wrong. Crone? Is it like that? No. If anybody knows that word, let me know. It's like a leader or a mentor, or like the responsible one. With like Capricorn energy, it's where we assume responsibility without being asked. And again, you can look at like what houses do you have in Capricorn, and what what other planets or points do you have in Capricorn. And yeah, like that whole idea of Capricorn is the responsible archetype. Like when we think about leadership, and lots of people can step into that role and can take on a title of leader or CEO or manager, supervisor, whatever. But like actually being responsible for other people is a weight and a burden that, if you want to understand it, I would say like look at Barack Obama at the beginning of his presidency compared to the end of his presidency, and I think you'll see what I mean about how when you wear the weight of responsibility on yourself, it's heavy. And so that is the light and the dark side of Capricorn, is your ability to take on responsibility. On the light side, the world needs more of that. The world needs more people who don't just kick the can down the road and make it somebody else's problem. People who are really going to take responsibility and like do something about it. Like you see a problem, let's do something about it. Like don't just assume somebody else is going to handle it. So like Capricorn energy, very good at just taking responsibility. The shadow side of Capricorn is that they're a little too good at taking responsibility, like for other people's shit, for other people's things that like, that's not your job. That's not your responsibility. They can also kind of like Pisces, Virgo, can a little bit martyr themselves in terms of take on so much responsibility until you're like crushed under the weight of your responsibility. It's that saying of like, if I want something to get done right, I have to do it myself. Like that is so the shadow side of Capricorn. And how many women have you ever heard say that? Like mostly women. I've heard men say it too, but this is a feminine energy. There's like almost a victim mindset in the shadow side of Capricorn that like, I have to be responsible. And you don't ever have to be responsible. In fact, like it's a huge responsibility to be the responsible one. Like it's an honor to be the trusted leader of a group of people, and to wear it like it's an honor and not a burden. If your responsibility feels like a burden, you've gone too far. Nobody asked you to take on that responsibility. This is something that like is a huge theme of my own life. Responsibility is one of those themes that I just circle around and around and around. Personally, I have a midheaven and Neptune both in Capricorn, and I am the oldest of 4 kids, and all 3 of my brothers were born by the time I was 5. So we are all extremely close in age. So like by the time I was 5 or 6, I had 3 little brothers that basically I took on responsibility for like being their second mom. And my mom had a hard time like raising 4 kids at the same time, like under 5 years old. Like obviously that's difficult. And in her own coping and whatnot, like she definitely took a step back at times to try to like rebuild her own sanity. And in those times when she would step away, I would automatically assume responsibility for my brothers, to the point where I grew up very angry at my mom for me having to be that responsible one, until several years later, I'm in my 20s, and it comes up between me and my mom that like I am holding this anger at her about this childhood experience of being the responsible one while she was not there. And I don't mean to make my mom sound bad. She was a great mom, but this was one of our things. And she, in perfect poetic soulmate justice, calling you on your soul's shit, she didn't miss a beat, threw it right back at me and said, nobody asked you to do that. And as I was so mad as I was, she was right. She was right. I did that. I signed up for that. I did it all by myself. I took on that responsibility, and then I was mad about it. I was mad about having to be responsible. And Capricorn energy, like the evolutionary path, is realizing that any responsibility you have, any true responsibility where people are counting on you to do what you're doing, that you're responsible for, that's a privilege that As soon as it starts to feel like a burden, you've gone too far. Make a U-turn, recalculating. Let's find our way back to where you only take on the responsibility that feels like that privilege. Feels like a privilege to raise my kids. It feels like a privilege to get to stay home with them all day. It feels like a privilege to blah blah blah, blah, like whatever it is. And so responsibility, taking responsibility for things, like I definitely fall on that end of like a chronic slack picker upper, to the point where I'll overburden myself again and again and again and do the burnout cycle again and again and again. And that's what brought me to self-care, which eventually brought me to astrology, etc. Like everything is always working out for us. But Capricorn energy is an interesting one, very multifaceted. And I feel like that responsibility piece fits really well with talking about Mars in Capricorn and like, what does that even mean? Because ultimately what it means is like, let's get going on some solutions. Let's see what we can do within our own span of responsibility to fight for what matters to us. And again, anytime we're talking transits, we always want to look back at like your own natal Mars placement in this example. So like Mars in Capricorn just means get serious and like take actions on what you think is worth fighting for. But really your natal Mars placement is what's going to fill in that last part of what is worth fighting for and what does that look like. But the Mars in Capricorn message that everyone is receiving right now is it's time. Actually, it's not right now. It's January 24th when Mars enters Capricorn, and then it'll stay in Capricorn for like a couple weeks. No, not a couple weeks, a couple months, because it has a 2-year orbit. So that means it would spend about 2 months per sign. So we have a couple months to reevaluate and take a good look at our span of responsibility. Do we like it? Are we happy wearing it? Or do we feel like other people are depending on us and it's sucking the life out of us? Because those things are always ours to put down whenever we're ready. So if you feel like you're wearing a burdensome responsibility, this would be a good couple months to look at like, what would it, not that you have to like blow it up and like throw it away, but what would it look like to set that down? Not necessarily how are you going to set it down, but what would life look like if you didn't have that responsibility? You know, just kind of spending some focus wheel type time in who is the person that, yeah, let's go of that responsibility. Because when my mom, that has been a very impactful experience. My mom telling me nobody asked you to do that, because it definitely got me thinking at how often I take responsibility for things that nobody asked me to do. And then I stress myself out. I drive myself crazy trying to make everything okay when that's not my responsibility. Like, getting clear on what are your responsibilities. And I would say the Mars piece being included means it's your responsibility to fight for your right to exist in this world. It's your responsibility to get your power from anybody who's holding it outside of you and put it back inside of yourself. It's your responsibility to practice compassion towards yourself so that you can give it to others, to practice loving yourself so that you can give it to others. Like, those are our responsibilities. And a lot of times we don't even get to those things because we're so busy doing all the things that we took responsibility for on behalf of other people when they didn't ask us to. So that's maybe a tough reality check to stomach. I know for me, like, you know, as a person who does chronically take on more responsibility than is mine, yeah, like it can be really challenging to take a step back and let go of those things. Like, you think that things are going to fall apart if you aren't the one that's like managing it and on top of it and like holding it all together, that it's just going to like all explode all of a sudden. And I mean, depending on what it is, like, yeah, maybe you need to like keep a hold of it a little bit. Like, if you got little kids, obviously like keep on being responsible for them. But even then, you know, like, I would say probably most parents do this to the shadow side of like taking on more responsibility for their kids than they need to, like, instead of letting the kid be responsible for themselves. Even as young as being a toddler, like as soon as they're mobile, they can do things. And so letting them do them. Don't insist on carrying them if they can walk. Don't insist on, you know, like soothing their emotions if they can soothe their emotions themselves. Like, let them build up their own autonomy and their own sense of their own power, so that by the time they're adults and living in society with the rest of us, they are nice neighbors and good people to work with. And they have coping skills because they had to use them when they were small. That's one thing that I saw in the Saturn conjunct Uranus, and Uranus opposite my sun and Saturn opposite my sun, like all of that was like, what it does is it creates like a very tumultuous childhood where there's constant change, constantly the rug being pulled out from under your feet. And obviously that's hard, but in the end, what you learn how to do is be really okay in a situation where the rug gets pulled out from under your feet. And I was like, whoa, that's so crazy to like go from definitely identifying with the shadow side of an energy to what's possible when you have a life experience that's full of that experience of getting the rug pulled out from under you. During COVID, I mean, it didn't affect me the same as it affected everybody else from what I could see. That like I just naturally was a little more stable inside this very changing environment. And having that calm in that moment of change, like that was because, early on, there were other siblings. Like I was talking to somebody the other day about how their older sister was 9 when she was born. And basically that pushed the older sister into this whole spiral of behavioral problems and so many things, because she lived the first 9 years of her life like rock solid. I'm the only child, full attention from everyone in the family. And then she's 9 years old and she has the rug pulled out from under her and she's not ready. She's not prepared. And it was like her whole teenage years, her whole 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. She's like in her late 50s now, and she's still recovering from her tumultuous childhood. Meanwhile, I'm 11 months old when my first brother's born. And then I think like 3 when my second one's born, and 4 when my third one is born. So like pretty much every year from like age almost 1, I joke. I have deep pain over my mom holding my brother Ross at my first birthday party. Like having those introductions and having the rug pulled out from under your feet, like so many times when you're little, it breeds strength to go through experiences like that when you're older. And I go so much into this because I feel like this Mars and Capricorn transit is a lot like that. Like this whole getting clear on where you're taking too much responsibility, it can be such a relief to get to let go of the burdensome part and shift your perspective towards the light side of the talent for taking responsibility for things. Like the givers out there who pick up all the slack and give everything they have to everybody else, like the talent that is, the ability to sense what even is the slack that needs to be picked up. That is an ability. That's Capricorn's ability. They are so aware of what the slack is. And I gotta think, and I think I saw somebody in the chat mention delegation. I gotta think the evolutionary path that really Capricorn is teaching someone is to learn how to delegate. And I think that plays out in when you have a lot of Capricorn energy, you are very sensitive to every ounce of slack that exists, and you naturally take it on as your responsibility. And inevitably, you will be overburdened and no longer able to perform any of your responsibilities because you've burnt yourself out by taking on every little thing. And the path is to learn how to use that sense of being able to sense the responsibilities, but don't internalize them. Being able to sense the responsibilities and give this one to this guy because he's really good at that. And then sense this responsibility and give it to this guy because he's really good at that. And this one and this one and this, and just like, you're just the, what even is that? Like the quarterback, maybe? Like you just receive it and give it away, receive it and give it away, receive it and give it away. It's not your job to physically do all the responsibilities just because you can sense that they exist. But at the same time, like this is where we flip then into appreciating the gift of that Capricorn energy, because if you have heavy placements in Capricorn, chances are you're resonating with what I'm saying as far as like being a little too good at taking on everybody else's responsibilities. People with like no Capricorn energy, they can walk right by a glaring pile of responsibilities and not be affected by it at all. Like they don't perceive that. It's not part of their reality because their energy is different. They're wired differently. They're perceiving different things. So if you do have heavy Capricorn energy, we need you. We need you to be sensitive to the responsibilities, to the slack, but also get better at delegation. This is something that I love practicing my delegation skills. It's so fun to line up tasks with someone's talents and get to watch them shine doing what they were born to do. Things that I may be this good at it, they're this good at it. So yeah, why not let them do it? Like control freak is the shadow side of Capricorn. So letting other people shine when it's their turn, handing over responsibility to somebody else. Like don't just delegate tasks, delegate responsibility. Like I'm not going to, tell you once a week, like, hey, go do this. I'm going to tell you, you're in charge of making this happen once a week. And if you have any problems, come see me. But otherwise, I'm going to trust that you're making this happen once a week. So yeah, that's like the evolution of that Capricorn energy. And Mars is a very passionate, fiery energy. That Mars is also not the only planet in Capricorn right now. We're going to talk about this more, I think next week or the week after, because there's Pluto. Mercury will be back in Capricorn here pretty soon. Venus is there, and now Mars is there. And Mars and Venus are going to be doing this little dance like back and forth through Capricorn for the next couple months. That's like maybe not months. Yeah, no, months, because Mars stays in Capricorn for a couple months. Check that out. Mars is also, you guys, I'm so random, jumping all over the place. You can tell I'm tired and I'm winding down, just FYI. Yeah, Mars is going to be in Gemini for 7 months, thanks to its retrograde later this year. I want to say that starts in like August maybe, and then goes until February, March of 2023. Mars is going to be in Gemini for 7 months. This fiery, passionate warrior spirit. And you better believe that my most concentrated energy is Gemini. So I don't know what that's going to be about, but yeah, it's super exciting to both connect with our warrior, put a face on it, get to know that side of ourselves, what's worth fighting for, what's your fighting style. All of those are good questions to get to know our Mars. And Capricorn, like to put the lens of responsibility on it. I feel like that's a worthwhile contemplation to think about. And even if you don't ever sit down and like intentionally go through your list of responsibilities, I'll bet you now next time you run into one that feels like a burden, this little seed is going to pop back up and be like, oh yeah, maybe I don't have to do this responsibility, or maybe I can let go of part of it or reshape it or delegate part of it. At least like put your solution hat on instead of just feeling burdened by the responsibility. See if you can do something about it. Because yeah, responsibility is a privilege. Being a leader is a privilege. And if it doesn't feel like that, then make a U-turn and let your GPS recalculate. So, thank you, Middle Way, and everybody who has shown up in this community these last couple of weeks. I am literally humbled by your presence and your wanting to spend your finite attention on my content. Is, yeah, humbling is about the only word I can come up with. If anything, it is deepening my own practice of being so committed and responsible for the energy that I bring to these messages, whether I'm on live stream or doing a video. The most important thing above and beyond the astrology is that through my voice, through my words, through my body language, through my aura, if you can see that, you are getting a download that is so much bigger than the words I'm choosing. And the energy that I tune into before I come on here and share is my top priority. And I'm humbled that you want to hang out with me, for real. So if you have questions, I love answering questions. It's like my favorite. Otherwise, yeah, keep coming back. Let me know like what kind of content, what you'd like to see. I'm always open to requests. I am a 6'3" in human design. If you're familiar, I've thought about doing a human design live stream where we can really get into some yumminess over there. But a 6'3" is basically like, I love to experiment. I want to try all the versions of all the things. I want to have every single experience for myself, to learn from it for myself, to get to run it through my system for myself. So yeah, I do a lot of different kinds of things on my channel and am very flexible to taking requests. So thank you so much. I hope these transmissions help you. I know they help me, and yeah, I absolutely love your presence in this space. So until next time, dear friends, you take such good care of yourselves, and so will I.